Namaste and greetings to all of you. In this module today, we thought we will discuss with you water and you. How does it impact you? Well, if you understand how it impacts you at home or at your workplace, you will also understand how you can make a career out of it with the learnings that this program will present to you. So let's get started. Well, first, in this module, I thought we will help you understand what is the larger water scenario in India today. How critical is this crisis? We have heard the Prime Minister Modi talking about how there is going to be a new water policy. And he has also talked about how across 775 districts in India, we will have about 60 lakes as per what the government's announcements are. And if you multiply 775 districts by 60, you will find that it is about 58 or 60,000 lakes that the government of India wants to see is created across our states. So why is water a crisis beyond all other crises in the country today? Now, look at what this table shows. Look at India. India has, as you can see, a certain amount of land area. Now, China has about 8.8 million square kilometers, or about 2.4 times or 2.5 times that of India's total land area. You can also see that Africa, for instance, has got 10 times the land area that India has got. So why these three regions? Why did we take these three regions? It's because the population, as you can see in red, is almost the same in these three areas, which means that the per capita water availability for you as an Indian is far, far less than it is for the African or for the Chinese. Now, what does that tell you? And why does that put you or India on top of the water crisis table in the world? Now, look at this. India secures the least amount of renewable water, and we consume the most in terms of total quantity of water. So what does that mean? Well, what is renewable water? You must know that the earth receives a certain amount of water. The planet receives a certain amount of water every year. It's not like, and this water is going back into the seas, it's going back into the mountains, into your lands, into your agriculture. Humans use it for various other purposes. And again, in this next year, we get the same quantum of rain, right? Now, one of the exercises you have to do is, what is the total volume of rainfall that the planet gets across its different parts in 1 year? How many billion cubic meters of rainfall does the world secure? We will get to answers of that kind as we progress on this program. Now, what is India's urban challenge as against the rest of the world? If you look at the census of India, the last one has still not come in, of 2021, you will find that we have about 7,900 towns or cities or agglomerations. An agglomeration is, let's say, New Delhi, for instance, or the NCR. Mumbai is an urban agglomeration. Bangalore is. Any city which has crossed the 10 million population limit is an agglomeration. India has about 58 to 60 cities which host a population of 1 million. And we have these 6-7 cities like Hyderabad, Kolkata, of course, Bombay, Bangalore, and Delhi, and Chennai, which have about 10 to 11 million as population, right? Now, what is the total quantum of such lands that our cities occupy? And you will find on any browser of the websites that you all visit that it is about 200,000 square kilometers, as against, as what you saw here, of 3.3 million square kilometers for India. What does that mean? that it is a very small percentage of the total land area. That is, with about 3% or so, maybe less, of the total land area, we have all our population, nearly 40 to 45% of our urban population, sitting in this 3% of the land. Now, like I told you, we have about 53 to 60 cities with 1 million population. And what happens in our cities is we consume the most. When you travel a train, for example, miles and miles you're going with no people. And then suddenly you hit another town and you see that there is a larger concentration of human beings, right? Now, wherever you have more humans, there is greater natural resource use is something you have to understand. Now, that last point that I raised is a reiteration, less than 5%. As a matter of fact, you study many of these websites and some of the research papers that you will find available on the websites, it will not be more than 3% of India's land mass that our urban India occupies. All right. Now, back again to that figure. 5 to 8% of land mass hosts 60% of our people. World Bank says that it's about 220,000 square kilometers. You saw that I wrote 200,000 square kilometers 2 slides away. This is still not too much. We are therefore arguing between 3% to 5% to 8% of the country's land mass being claimed by our cities. The figures that you see at the left bottom in terms of thousands is to do with the population density. Let's not go there for now. Now, look at this. Why should you know? If you are, say, an engineer taking this program, you're a civil engineer, you're an electrical engineer, you are an architect, you are a commerce graduate or a chartered accountant. You could even well be a doctor or a lawyer. Any one of you who is listening to this module just now will have to figure out in your own personal ways as to why you have to understand water solutions, because it impacts you. Take a day with, let's say, no water in your house, and you can imagine what it can mean. You take it for granted. We always say, okay, if I don't get water today in my flat or in my house or in my office, it's somebody else's problem, and that somebody will do something about getting you water, and you open your tap, presto, you got water. Is that how it is? Now, any of you as educated, discerning Indians also understand that there are many, many districts where there are thousands, I would say millions of women who walk maybe 5 kilometers, maybe 6 kilometers to go and fetch just 20 liters of water. You have seen such stark pictures of places in Rajasthan, places in Gulbarga, and many of these dry districts of Maharashtra or of Karnataka, or even of South Madhya Pradesh, where there is not enough water. And the water that they get is very contaminated. But I am jumping the story. Let me tell you about contamination probably later. So the reason that you need to know about water solutions is that it directly impacts your life. You can fast without food for 30 days and you can live. But more than 3 days is very difficult to live and survive without water. The daily water equation. I take this example of one city. You could replace Bangalore with the city that you belong to. You could be from Nashik, you could be from a smaller town like, say, Guna in Madhya Pradesh, or you could be from Nagpur. All cities in India today have the same pattern that you see in these 5 bullet points that this slide covers. Bangalore has a population of about 1 crore people. That's 10 million people. Now, Bangalore consumes approximately 200 liters per person, per citizen of Bangalore at an average. And therefore, 1 crore turns to 200 crore liters or 2 billion liters. Now, take the same math. Let's say you're living in, say, Pune. Pune will have about 7 million as population. Check that out on the websites. Now, if I have 7 million, if I were to multiply it by, let's say, the same 200, I get 7 million into 200 of about 1400 million or 1.4 billion liters of water for a Pune. Now, you take your city and work the math, and you will see that more or less the pattern is the same. That leads me to the second point. In most cities, including smaller cities like Aurangabad, Madurai, Trichy, what the water supply board or the municipal water supply offers is only about 50% of the water that the city requires or demands per day. Now, what does that mean? The rest of it is coming from borewells. In India, if I include agriculture water also, you will find that 70% of the water that we draw is from groundwater. So where does the crisis come? Across India in the last 10 years, what has happened is that we have slowly moved away from using surface water or river waters to using groundwater much more. And therefore, the depletion of our groundwater levels has been extremely rapid in some places in the last 20 years, but in some places in the last 10 years from about 2010. Please also remember that our population is steadily rising across our cities for two reasons. One is, of course, people have more children, and that's a smaller number. The other is that there is migration from our villages into our cities. Post-COVID, that migration has slowed down a bit. But then as the economy revives and as people look for jobs, people with small holdings, 1 acre, 2 acres, will start gravitating to the city for a job. The next time you get into a taxi or a cab, ask the driver where he comes from, and he will typically come from a village, maybe 5, 6, 8 hours, or maybe 10, 12 hours from the city that you are in. And he will tell you a story of how he is one among 4 or 5 children. The father had a certain amount of land, and it got divided between the children, and he's now got maybe 2 acres. And the next thing you will hear is, sir, there is no water in our village, and therefore I am not able to make a living with the small land holding that I have. And so people move from villages and small land holdings into cities to make a living, to see how they can earn by getting a job. How does that impact all of what we are talking about here? The key story, remember, is that our use of groundwater has increased tremendously in the last 20 years, and that has left India with a very, very serious crisis. I began today by talking to you about how the Prime Minister Modi has decided to see that he will have more surface water bodies or lakes or tanks created across our districts. And what does that mean? Essentially, the government is trying to see how we can increase the quantum of surface water which can be utilized for agriculture or for drinking or for other purposes that humans need it for. Now, if I go back to Bangalore, and that's the 4th bullet point, we find that groundwater availability in 1980, when the city was only about 2 million as population, today's figure is about 13 million, 6 times. From 1980 to 2022, in 42 years, Bangalore has moved from a population of 2 million to 12 million. Now, what happened therefore was the water that was coming from the Jal Nigam or the Water Supply Board was not enough. And that figure of the supply board's quantum of water supply became less and less as a percentage, and the quantum of water taken from bore wells became higher. And today we have, therefore, places in the north of Bangalore where the water is at depths of 1,500 to 1,700 feet. That's half a kilometer below the surface of the land. People think that, well, if I put a bore well, I'll get water. It does not happen that way, especially when there is no water. It is like a bank account. If you do not deposit money into the bank account, you cannot draw from it, right? Here, we are not depositing or recharging our groundwater systems at the same pace at which we are drawing water. I am telling you this because as part of our modules, you will begin to understand how recharge of water is one of the key aspects of solutions to effective water management. The last one is about financial numbers. BWSSB here is the Bangalore Water Supply Sewerage Board. Well, this could have been Aurangabad and on their water administration day. It could have been Pondicherry, or it could have been, like I said, Nashik or any other city, Jaipur, or any city in the country. And you'll see that there is a cost, a huge cost per day that the Water Supply Board pays in order to supply you water. But are they effective? Are they just spending the monies? How much water are they giving to you? And are you really confident? Do you have the faith in the Jal Nigam or the Water Supply Board to be sure that you will get water supplied every day and regularly? Look at this. This is the water use per capita. We took one city. The researchers at the foundation have made this study to understand how inside a city you have different segments of people. You can see from slums to low income group, to middle income group, to high income groups, the rich people. The consumption patterns don't change too much. Well, the slum person normally has only 60 liters per day as consumption. They're frugal by nature. The other is they don't have the money to buy too much water. They have to go and buy water from elsewhere. They don't get water in taps. In any city, only 30% of the city gets water on tap. 70% of people don't get water in taps. So you've got to be a lucky person if you are one of them who opens a tap and gets water. Now look at the low income group. It moves to about 100 liters, which means if you're a family of 4, it'll become about 400 liters to your house. And then at the MIG and the HIG levels, the quantum of water you use becomes higher because you might use it for your plants or landscape. You might have a car and you might want to wash it. And therefore, the quantum of water goes up as per capita use when it comes to the richer segments. You can do a similar exercise in your city to find out how these figures vary in terms of the number of people who are using such water. Now, this is the non-residential water use. That is beyond our consumption. Hotels use water. Industry uses water. We have hospitals using water. We have sometimes, well, a chip maker uses water if he has to make those chips that go into your laptop or into your smartphone. Approximately 30 liters of water is used for the making of one chip, and we make billions of chips. You know that only in India alone, we have about 800 million phones, smartphones. You know the numbers of smart laptops that are being used and so on. And so for every chip, in cars also we have chips today. For every chip, there is water consumed at the embodied water manufacture level. And that is something we will discuss in one of the modules as we go along. The residential water use profile, as I told you, breaks up like this. Broadly remember that every third citizen is in a slum, every third citizen is in an LIG, and every third citizen is like you and I who are in the middle class, let us say, right? Now, look at these figures, and you will find more of it from our websites and from the modules beyond the learning that we are presenting here today. You will find reports like these, and you can find more of them as you become slowly a water professional with the learning that we offer you. In any city, if you were to take water that comes from the Jal Nigam and you send it for a water quality test, you will find that it is more often than not non-potable. And why is that so? There are risks of contamination in the pipelines that bring water from a river or from some source like that the Jal Nigam uses. Now, the other thing that we find is with the excessive use of bore wells, which draws from deep aquifers, the groundwater has a lot more hardness. In many places, even in Bangalore, the hardness count has reached 2,500, 3,000. Hard water means that if you were to take a bath, it will not froth when you apply soap or any such for your skin. Now, hardness for portability should not be over about 400 at the max. Now, if you had good soft water at say 150 count or 200 count, it is much better for the human system and for plants. So there is an impact that's happening across beyond human beings, livestock, plants and trees. All of them are getting water that is far harder than it was, let us say, 40 years ago. And that is also adding to a city's misery when it comes to its environmental protection. The conductivity, salinity in water is greater when it comes, for instance, to rainwater. So this is a very peculiar phenomenon, and we can discuss this later in greater detail. But what happens is, if I take rainwater and use it for plants, for crops, it's much better than using irrigation water. That's an interesting property there of water itself, and you need to study more about it, about electrical conductivity, and see how you can bring change to the way that you grow your crops or use it for your drinking purposes. Risk to infrastructure pipelines, thanks to heavy scaling of pipes. That is, in every city we are finding today that pipes are 50 years old, 70, 80 years old. In certain cities like Bombay, the lines were laid, the water pipelines were laid in 1930. That's nearly 100 years now. The lines are working. There's nothing wrong with the pipelines. But there are places where there have been breakages, there have been leakages. A city like Bombay loses 40% of its water on leakages. City like Bangalore loses about 40. The same is the story in Chennai, where officially the government has admitted that there has been leakages of 45% of treated water as it comes into the city from the rain-fed reservoirs in Chennai. Now, the last one is about how, if you're living in an apartment which was built, say, in 2000 or in 2005, it's already 15 to 16, 17, 20 years old. Now, in such apartments, if they have used GI pipes, there is need for you to change those pipes in order to see that the next 20, 25 years is lived comfortably. So what is wrong with the use of existing pipes if they are as old? Scaling, which is another property that comes from hardness, will have filled the inside of the pipes. Now, if you were to take a pipe, brick, and look at the insides of a pipe which is, say, 15 years old, you will see heavy deposits of calcium, which comes as part of the scaling, and that comes out of hardness count in groundwater. So what do you do with such things? Well, there are solutions for it in terms of descaling, but apart from descaling it, you need to see that in some cases where it is beyond redemption, you need to replace the GI pipes with probably UPVC pipes, which have come into the market in probably the last 12, 15 years. Well, before we close this module, I leave a few of these questions for you to answer, for you to reflect upon as a young professional who wants to learn a great deal more on water. How do you compute your city's water demand if you are in a city like, say, Nashik? First, look at your city, look at your browser and websites, understand how much the population is, multiply it by 200, and you will know approximately the demand for water. Then go back to a few other reports and see if your estimation matches what the city's estimates are. The second one is, what is the source of water for your city? Well, forget the city. What is the source of water for your house? Does it come from a borewell that you have laid in your own home? Does it come from tankers that bring water to your apartment if you live in an apartment? Does it come from a river source if you're in a city where the water supply board has brought it from a city? If you are, for example, in Pune, what are the rivers that supply water to your water supply board? And how does the water supply board reach it to your home? What is the distribution mechanism? Try to understand that. To make another estimate, look at the third bullet. How many bore wells do you estimate your city to have? Do some research on this on the web, and you'll find the figures are startling. So why is it that bore wells hurt the land, the groundwater resource, as well as you? I think the answers are reasonably obvious from some of the things that we have discussed today. Bore wells have higher hardness count. Bore wells have higher TDS. Bore wells bring in lots of other minerals, and you need to see that you treat them before you use them. The fourth bullet is about the city's population. Estimate that. If your city today has X number as population, what was it in 1980? And what is it going to be by 2030? And what was the demand for water in 1980, 2022, now, and in 2030? And what do you believe are solutions for mitigating this crisis of water in your city? The fifth bullet is very simple. It's about calculating per capita water availability in your city. Look at it. If let's say your city has say 100 square kilometers, I'm just taking an example. And let's say you're getting 1 meter of rainfall. So 100 square kilometers at 1 meter, you work out the volume, and you will know therefore how much rainfall your city has received. Then you ask yourself, what is your daily water demand in your city? And then look at the source of water. After that, consider the possibility of your being an urban planner, or your being the chief minister of the country, of the state, or you're being, let us say, the mayor of your city. And what would you do, therefore, in order to ensure that you increase the per capita water availability in your city, right? Now think about it. The last one is about water demographics, which is, like I showed you earlier, in your city, how many people live in the slums, how many live in middle-class families, in LIGs and in HIGs, and what do commercial buildings and industry consume as water? Try to understand that if you can. That brings me to the close of this module. There will be questions that will be asked of you at the end of this. There is a simple Google form that will be sent to you, and that will be the beginning of your learning on water and the management development program that we are offering you here. See you again soon.